They didn't ask for her name. They didn't offer her a seat. When she pointed at the luxury coupe and said, "I'd like to test drive that one," they laughed because to them, she didn't look like someone who could afford it. That was their first mistake. What does wealth look like? Who gets the benefit of the doubt? Is it in the clothes, the posture, the accent? Brianna Ellis had stopped chasing validation long ago. She didn't need to prove she was capable. She came to remind people she already was. It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday, nothing dramatic. Just a casual visit to a dealership she'd passed a dozen times on the edge of uptown Charlotte, North Carolina. She parked a small rental outside. No chauffeur, no flashy outfit, no designer bag. Just sneakers, a gray hoodie, and the calm focus of someone who didn't need attention to feel powerful. The dealership gleamed. Polished tile, floor-to-ceiling windows, spotlights, angled perfectly over glistening machines. The kind of place that sold status as much as it sold horsepower. 3 salesmen stood near the coffee bar, all men, all in tailored slacks and tight smiles. They looked up when she entered and then back down, as if she were out of place, as if she might have walked in by mistake. She walked straight toward the limited edition coupe, deep blue, sleek, $280,000 before taxes. She leaned slightly forward, eyes scanning every detail of the machine. That was when one of the salesmen finally approached her. "Looking for someone?" he asked casually, tone flat. She turned, still relaxed. "Yes, I'd like to test drive this one." He raised his eyebrows. "This one? You know that's a performance edition. We don't let just anyone." "I'm not just anyone," Brianna replied calmly. He blinked. "We usually require proof of income or financing pre-approval before letting people drive vehicles like this." She glanced toward the door. That man who just drove out didn't show anything. There was a pause. The salesman's smirk faltered, but not enough. "It's just policy," he said. "We've had people come in just to sit in the cars and take pictures. Influencers, dreamers, people wasting time. You know how it is." "No," she said, "but you're about to find out how it should be." The tone didn't change. She didn't raise her voice. She simply asked, "Who's the general manager here?" "He's not in on weekends," the salesman shrugged. "You'll have to come back Monday." "Perfect," she said. "Until then, who's technically in charge?" Now, all 3 salesmen were paying attention, but none of them had answers. Brianna turned and left. Outside, the sky was clear and cold. She pulled her phone from her hoodie pocket and made one call. "I want the paperwork ready by Monday morning," she told her attorney. "Full acquisition, quietly." It wasn't spontaneous. She had been eyeing this property for 6 months. It was prime location, underperforming, and poorly managed. The final decision was made the moment someone laughed in her face. By the time she got home, the documents were already in her inbox. She didn't post anything, didn't rant. She just waited. Monday morning arrived fast. She returned to the dealership at 9:04 a.m., this time in a tailored charcoal blazer, leather flats, and a gold pendant that caught the light just enough. The same 3 salesmen were inside. One of them saw her through the window and sighed. "Ma'am, we've already—" he started as she walked in. "I'm not here to test drive anything," Brianna said. The general manager, a man in his late 50s with a stiff tie and tired eyes, came out from his office holding a clipboard. His assistant was trailing behind with a folder in hand. "You must be Ms. Ellis," he said nervously. The salesman froze. The manager extended a hand. "Welcome. The team's expecting you for the transition walkthrough." Brianna smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I won't take long. I just came to see the expressions." The room shifted. The same men who smirked 2 days ago suddenly stood straighter, eyes wide, silent. They looked like statues, caught mid-thought, mid-breath, mid-regret. No one said a word. Brianna turned to the coupe again, the one she was denied. She ran her hand gently over the hood, then looked back at the stunned faces behind her. "I'll be replacing the floor team," she said simply, "effective immediately." The GM nodded. "Understood." She didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She just left them there, watching her, finally realizing who they'd underestimated. And now that you're here, if this story made you stop and think, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below telling us how you would have handled that situation. This is just the beginning. The dealership hadn't changed overnight, but everything inside it had. Brianna stood in the center of the showroom, hands in her pockets, watching the staff scramble behind the glass office doors. There was no grand announcement, no ribbon cutting, just a quiet memo sent at 8 a.m. sharp. New ownership effective immediately. All current staff report to the conference room at 9:30. They read it in silence. Some laughed nervously. Others didn't believe it. But by the time Brianna walked through the front doors, the doubt vanished. The first person to try and speak to her was the same salesman who dismissed her on Saturday. His name was Rob. He stepped forward, fake smile already plastered across his face. "Ms. Ellis," he began, "I think there's been some sort of misunderstanding." "There hasn't," she said calmly. "You'll have your chance to speak shortly." He backed away like he'd touched something hot. In the conference room, 9 staff members sat stiffly. Brianna stood at the front, arms folded. Her expression was composed, but her presence shifted the entire tone of the space. No one dared check their phone. No one joked. "Before we get started," she said, "I want to ask one question." She scanned the room slowly. "Do any of you remember what I was wearing when I came in on Saturday?" A pause, then a voice. Hoodie, sneakers, jeans maybe?" Brianna nodded. "Right. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive. And how many of you assumed I couldn't afford to be here?" Silence. She didn't wait for a confession. "That tells me everything I need to know." She picked up a stack of folders from the table beside her. One by one, she placed them in front of each employee. Inside were performance reports, customer reviews, and a personal note. "I don't fire people lightly," she said, "but I don't reward disrespect either." She let that sit in the air. "I'm not here to punish. I'm here to rebuild. This business is bleeding potential, and it's not because of the cars, it's the culture." One man tried to interrupt. "Ms. Ellis, if I may—" "You may not," she replied. "You had your chance Saturday." She turned toward the window. The coupe she admired was now parked just outside, gleaming in the morning light. Not to flaunt, to remind. "I came here planning to buy a car. Instead, I bought the building. That wasn't my first choice, but you made it necessary." She wasn't angry. She was surgical, director, and impossible to ignore. The HR director, who had just arrived from corporate, entered the room with a clipboard in hand and gave her a nod. Interviews would begin that afternoon. Evaluations had already started. Brianna looked at the team once more. "If you're still here by next week, it means I believe in your ability to learn and unlearn. But let me be clear. Anyone who confuses kindness with weakness will be gone by Friday." She left the room without waiting for applause. Back in her office, newly cleared, still smelling like fresh paint, Brianna sat down slowly and opened her laptop. Emails were already flooding in. a congratulatory message from a former colleague, a request for an interview from a business magazine, even a LinkedIn connection request from Rob. She didn't accept it. Instead, she pulled out a notebook and began writing a new set of hiring guidelines. One focused not just on sales numbers, but on emotional intelligence, bias recognition, and human respect. Because what happened to her on Saturday wasn't rare. It happened to people like her every day. People judged on surface, dismissed by default, underestimated without cause. And she was tired of it. Not in the loud, angry way, in the quiet, powerful way that changed systems from the inside out. Her assistant knocked on the door and stepped in. "There's a woman here to see you," she said. "Says she came in Saturday, too. She saw what happened." Brianna looked up. "Send her in." The woman entered nervously, mid-40s, simple blazer, tired eyes. "I just wanted to say," she began, "I saw the way they treated you. I didn't say anything, and I should have. That was wrong." Brianna studied her. "Why didn't you?" The woman hesitated. "Because I've been that woman too, and I didn't think my voice would matter." Brianna nodded slowly. "Well, it matters now. Do you sell cars?" "No," the woman said, "but I've managed customer service teams before." "Good," Brianna replied. "We're hiring. And I don't care if you've never closed a sale. I care that you see people." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Brianna offered her a seat. "Number, thank you for not walking away today." Outside, the sun hit the glass just right. The coupe glowed. The showroom buzzed softly. But inside that office, something much louder was happening. A new culture was taking root, not built on image, built on value. And this was only the beginning. The whisper started before lunchtime. Customers were talking. Other dealers in the area had already heard. One staff member got a text from a friend at a competing showroom. "Is it true? Did she really buy the place?" Yes, she did. And now, people were watching to see what she'd do next. But Brianna wasn't thinking about making a statement. She was thinking about systems, the broken ones, the silent ones, the ones no one questioned until someone like her walked in. She wasn't interested in being a symbol. She wanted structure, accountability, and a dealership where every person, not just the ones in designer watches, felt seen when they stepped through the door. She started with the training. New scripts. Number, no one learns empathy from a script. Instead, she brought in a specialist, an inclusion coach from a local organization who had worked in everything from airports to law firms. The sessions were mandatory, small groups only, cameras off, phones off, just people and hard truths. Some resisted. You could feel it, the discomfort, the tension. But she didn't care about comfort. She cared about whether they were willing to change. "You're not here to be perfect," the coach said during one session. "You're here to be better than yesterday." And that became the dealership's new internal motto. By midweek, Brianna had also changed the hiring process. Every applicant now went through a final round with her, not for approval, but for alignment. One candidate, a young man in a wrinkled shirt, walked in nervous. "I've never sold anything in my life," he admitted, "but I've worked 3 jobs at once, and I know how to treat people with respect." "You're hired," she said before he finished. The sales team didn't understand at first, but when that same man, barely trained, turned a test drive into a sale because the customer felt comfortable with him, they started listening. Brianna never yelled, never pointed fingers. She made moves, quiet ones, strategic ones, like rearranging the layout of the floor. She moved the lower-priced cars closer to the entrance, not to trick anyone, but to send a message. You belong, even if you're not here to spend a fortune. She also adjusted the lighting, opened the blinds, brought in a few local artists to hang their work on the walls for free exposure. The showroom looked warmer, lived in, welcoming. Some of the older staff murmured about the changes. They liked the cold polish, the exclusivity. But those were the same people who hadn't sold a car in weeks, because now people were coming in just to meet her. Customers who never imagined they'd step into a dealership like this. People who said, "I saw the article," or "My cousin told me what happened," or just, "I had to see it for myself." One customer stood out, a woman in her 60s, modest dress, gray curls pulled into a neat bun. She walked in clutching a manila folder and asked to speak to the owner. Brianna came out from her office and greeted her with a calm smile. "I don't need a car," the woman said. "I need your advice." They sat down at a small table near the window. The woman unfolded a brochure, an old, outdated design for a community driving school she'd started years ago. "I've been trying to expand," she explained. "Banks won't listen, and I don't have the look of someone they believe in." Brianna leaned in. "I know that look. I've lived in that silence." The woman nodded, her voice shaking. "But when I read what happened to you here, I thought maybe I'm not crazy for dreaming." Brianna didn't flinch. She reached for a pen. "Tell me what you need." They talked for over an hour. It wasn't about money. It was about mentorship, strategy, a warm connection in a cold world. When the woman left, she hugged Brianna. "You didn't just buy a business," she whispered. "You opened a door that wasn't supposed to exist." Brianna stood still after she left, staring at the table, the empty coffee cup, the notes scribbled on her pad. That's when it hit her. This was no longer just about the dealership. It was about building something that made other people believe they could build too. And that was bigger than any car she'd ever dreamed of driving. By the end of the first week, the entire dealership felt different. Phones still rang. Engines still roared in the service bay. But under the surface, everything had shifted. No more side glances. No more quiet dismissals. People watched their words now, not out of fear, but awareness. It wasn't fear that changed the culture. It was visibility. Brianna didn't walk around barking orders. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. Every morning she arrived early, coffee in one hand, notes in the other. She walked the floor, not to inspect, but to observe. She watched how people greeted each other. She listened to tones, not just words. When new hires arrived, she met them herself. "Here's the only rule that matters," she told them. "Treat every person who walks through that door like they could own the place, because someday one of them might." That line spread fast. Sales reps started quoting it to each other like gospel. It wasn't just a reminder, it was a warning and a standard. But the ones who'd underestimated her still carried the shame of that first day. Especially Rob. He kept his head down, completed every task, even started volunteering for extra hours. But he avoided her eyes. Until one afternoon, after most of the staff had gone home, he knocked on her office door. "Can I say something?" he asked, standing halfway inside. She looked up from her screen. "You just did. Come in." He stepped in slowly, hands clasped tight. His voice was lower than usual. "I owe you an apology." Brianna didn't respond right away. She let him sit in the discomfort. "I know I treated you like you didn't belong," he continued, "and you didn't deserve that. I was wrong." Still, she said nothing. I've worked in this business for 12 years, he added, but I've never had a woman, let alone a black woman, in charge. That's not an excuse, just the truth. Finally, Brianna spoke. Do you know what I remember most about that day? He shook his head. You didn't even ask my name? Rob swallowed hard. That told me everything, she said. You weren't just dismissing me. You were sure I couldn't matter. He looked down. I've done the same thing to other people, he admitted. I didn't even realize it. That's the problem, she said softly. No one realizes until the person they ignore has the power to change their future. She stood. I'm not here to ruin you. I'm here to make sure you never do that to anyone else again. He nodded. You've already done that. Good, she said. Now go prove it. Rob walked out quietly, not defeated, but different. The next day, Brianna saw him open the door for an older customer, offer water, take time explaining options. No rush, no assumptions. And when the customer left with a smile, even without buying, Rob looked proud. That's when Brianna knew real change was happening. Brianna stood there a moment longer, staring at the glass doors the woman had just walked through. Outside, the sun was high, casting long reflections across the polished floor. She thought back to that first moment, the laughter, the dismissal, the way they looked past her like she didn't matter. And now, this quiet revolution she hadn't planned but maybe was always meant to lead. Not with noise, with action, not with rage, with truth. She walked slowly back to her office, not to rest, but to keep building. Because somewhere out there, someone else was still being ignored, still being told, not today, not enough, not the type. And when they arrived, she wanted this place to be ready, not just with keys and contracts, but with eyes that see, voices that listen, and doors that stay open. Because sometimes the loudest statement isn't what you say, it's what you change, and never allow to go back to how it was. If this story moved you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below telling us what this story meant to you.